So my name's Paul Kahn. I'm a recent immigrant to Normandy. I have papers, so I'm allowed to be here. And I've been teaching information design for about 10 years. And I came up with this question a few years ago, which was, why don't we teach history of information design through books? Sort of a different approach. And my concept of information design is that it's a range of visual techniques that support the flow of verbal and visual content information between people across different periods of time. And generally we divide and describe it by themes such as maps and timelines, structures like trees, circles, time periods, this is medieval, this is 19th century, or even cultures, saying this is European culture, this is Islamic culture, Asian culture. And we generally use really interesting examples like this Tabula Rogeriana map of representation of Europe, or the plan de Turgot, which is this amazing map of Paris. Non-Western examples like the Yankton winter count, or something that we're all immediately familiar with, such as the London Underground map from the 1930s, or even some of these amazing examples that Attila has been pointing out and reproducing on his blog, like this data visualization of all of the coffee being imported into Germany in the 1930s. I propose that we teach other skills and concepts as well. Seeing information design in the context of books, and particularly books that demand a very strong visual program. And when we do this, we'll be able to understand more about book arts, about reproduction techniques, about design systems. And in particular, what I've been interested in is a class of books that I call books that visualize the world. These have a set of common attributes. They generally respond to a very strong cultural need to visualize the entire world, either some royal command or a big commercial goal or some personal need. They generally rely on multiple information design strategies. You can't do this with a single strategy. They employ the finest production methods for combining images and text. And that means that the reproduction technology of the time is what you're seeing. So, talking about books that describe the world, they have these common attributes. They have coherent design systems. They often combine past and current sources, no matter what time period we're talking about. And they adapt these information to the available display options. You have to consider page size, spreads, the portability of the material, as well as the physical extensions that are possible at that time. So the 7 books that I've been working with are, the earliest one is the Tabula Rogeriana. This is a copied manuscript. The original is from sometime in the 12th century, but the copies that we work with now are copies that were done hundreds of years later. The Catalan Atlas, which is a unique manuscript that was done in Mallorca in the 14th century. The Nuremberg Atlas, which is printed from metal type and wood blocks, hand-colored. The Tushubian, which is also printed from wood blocks. This is an example of the woodblock book printing tradition that was already hundreds of years old in China at that time and continued for hundreds of years. The Atlas Historique, which was printed in Amsterdam from metal type and now copper plate engraving, which really changed things a lot, as well as hand coloring. And the Physikalische Atlas, Berghaus's book that was printed in Germany in the middle 19th century. This was printed from metal type and copper plate, but also lithography and hand coloring. And the World Geographic Atlas, Herbert Bayer's great book that was printed with metal type using multicolor offset lithography. And the relative size of the display, the page spreads, as you see here, is quite different in these books. It's not as though the oldest ones are the smallest, though you see the Tushubian at the bottom. The Chinese book format is actually the smallest display level. So I try to ask certain questions when I do this. What audience are these books designed for? What do the author and designer choose to represent, and what do they exclude? And what information design patterns do they use? How do they use circles? Where is time? Is there a past? Is there a future in this representation? How do they represent transmission of authority, lineage, and genealogy? What sort of transportation and trade, how the world is connected is being represented, and how the differences among people are represented. How do they classify the humanity of the world? And very interestingly, what is the center of the world in each one of these books? So the earliest one, the Book of Roger, the Tabula Rogeriana, is designed based on the assumption that the world is separated into 7 climates, and then each of those climates is described in 10 sections. This image that you see is the first image in the book, which is this representation of the world, Africa, Asia, and Europe. South is at the top here, so the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, the Caspian are down at the bottom. The Indian Ocean is it's sort of in the middle, and then we have this world ocean surrounding the world. And the visual language is bodies of water are clearly separated with patterns of lines. Rivers are consistent lines. Mountains are small, intricate patterns. And then the towns are represented by small circles. These are 2 pages that both represent the Dalmatian coast from that book. The first one at the top is a copy made in 1300, and the one at the bottom is a copy made 150 years later. You can see how consistent the visual language was as this manuscript passed through centuries. So this is the image of the Earth at the center of the universe from the Catalan Atlas, surrounded by elements, planets, and astrological signs. The representation of the Earth now includes very detailed list of all the coastal ports here along the Atlantic coast and individual towns. And we also see the rulers of Africa and Asia. When we come to the Nuremberg Chronicle, which is organized as a history from creation to the present, it begins, the text itself is organized by the 7 ages of the Judeo-Christian time concept at the time. And we see this abstract notion of the first 4 days of creation, very similar representation with the Earth in the center there. And when we come to questions of lineage, we have these very complex and interesting spreads using a vegetal metaphor connecting, in this case, Noah to the descendants of Noah. We also begin to see cities represented as though you were coming to that city. In this case, we see Venice. We also, in some of the details like this one's of Ravensburg, we see the information about the type of commerce that's going on, things being loaded on and off the boats in the Danube. And the Tushubian, the organization is divided into 3 parts, heaven, earth, and humanity. It begins with diagrams of creation, like this one, these of the history of the Taiji diagram. We also get the Liu Shuo diagram, which is begins as an inscription of a turtle emerging from the river and then turns into this abstract set of patterns that are related to the Book of Changes. We get some very interesting detailed diagrams of time. In this one, each of those concentric circles represents time units of hours, days, months, and seasons. We get a wide range of different types of maps. This map is a more abstract map of China with the major rivers and mountains. We also have much more detailed maps that require being broken across several different pages. In this case, this map requires 4 separate pages to get all the topographic and other information about the country. In the Atlas Historique, it's organized into 7 volumes. The very first one is organized around the history of the Greco-Roman history and all the kingdoms of Europe in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. There's a separate volume on Asia, a separate volume on Africa and the Americas, and a supplement. This combination of maps, charts, and diagrams. And when it comes to creation, we see multiple versions of where the Earth is in the universe. We see Ptolemy, but we also see Tycho Brahe, Copernicus, and the relative size of the planets. When it comes to the genealogies, because this is using copperplate, the prints themselves can be enormous. They're printed very large, much larger than the book, and then they're folded and bound into the book. And we can also get these very detailed maps that are, in fact, this one is 6 times the size of the book. and it combines both geographic information as well as illustrations from different travel books. So we look down at this part of South America, we see this detail of the port of Acapulco, people from Peru, and in the upper right, we see the one detail in the entire book where African slaves are represented working on sugar mills in the Caribbean. In the 19th century, Berghaus's book is divided up into separate sections of the specialties of science at the time. So we've got meteorology separate from hydrology, from geology. This example is from the meteorology. It shows the isothermic curves of the northern hemisphere based on work that was inspired Berghaus by Alexander von Humboldt. And when we get to geography, he's able to show the outlines of all of the continents, and he can rotate the Earth. In this case, we see both the Antarctic and the Arctic as he separates the Earth into one sphere that is mostly land and the other sphere that is mostly water. He also is using the 19th century concept of race and nationality very strongly. So the last book, this is the last. So the last book here is Herbert Bayer's World Geographic Atlas, which he subtitles A Composite of Man's Environment. And he begins that book with this Venn diagram. So he has a lot of similarities to the focus of the Berghaus book. He's combining geography and geology and climatology, but he's also including economics and demographics in his view of the entire world. He begins this book with similarly very scientific diagrams, this one on cosmogony, astronomy and geology, as well as this one on meteorology. So now we begin to see this combination of scientific diagrams, maps, and he works his way into the maps by first showing the world with the alignment of all of the different mountains below this unfolding of the globe, as well as the depths of the oceans, and then moves into individual continents such as North America, and then from there into individual countries and states. And he begins to use collage and color separation in a very modernist fashion, which has also influenced a lot of us. And he's using isotype, this system that was developed by Otto Neurath and Neurath's team in Vienna in the 1920s and 30s. And he's using this to show information about population and land area and immigration. And he also really focuses on the idea of impactful graphics, impactful data. So at the very end of the book, this last page of the book, he's trying to get across the idea that overpopulation is really the thing that is most dangerous at the end of the Second World War period. So I'm sorry that it didn't go so smoothly, but I'll end with a question that really comes into my mind as I'm doing this kind of work, which is how do we create the book that visualizes the world today in the 21st century? And I'll end with that.